Thanks, Chris. Yeah, we're doing it. Games that I am currently obsessed with. With this video series, I am taking off the reviewer hat. I am saying, okay, consumer Chris, what am I most interested in? This is going to be a complete spread. Stuff that I have, stuff that I'm getting, as well as stuff I'm looking forward to that maybe isn't out yet, or maybe not on crowdfunding yet, as well as a few older things that just need more love and a little bit of mix there in between. You'll understand where I'm going with that in a minute. You ready? Let's do it. So again, here we go, right? This is Andromeda's Edge. I bought Andromeda's Edge. I was a backer, and for all of you looking at this video and going, oh, what's he going to tell us about Andromeda's Edge? Well, you can see I haven't even taken the shrink off. Just got it and just got it out. I did not, truth be told, do the legendary pledge. I said, okay, I can only afford the deluxe pledge. No, I said, okay, what's the difference? Just some deluxifications. You know me, if you watched my channel before, I am a gameplay person. Deluxifications are nice. But as I just said on one of my other videos, talking about like Castles of Burgundy, which is sitting down next to me, next to the table, as well as the Puerto Rico special edition, at some point, no matter how customized these trays, inserts, whatevers are, it's going to just lead to more time getting in and out. There's a curve there where it, lessens it, and then there's just so much of it that it starts creeping back up. So that was my fear with this, and I said, okay, you know what? Nope. But I got all my little extras too here. We have basically a little bit of expansion modular content here. The Hive and Hornet Raiders, whatever the heck that's supposed to be. Again, I know next to nothing about the actual physical gameplay of this right now. Miniatures, standees, raider cards, stands, again, just going to be doing some take that with this one, I guess, right? We'll talk about that later. And this was sort of anticlimactic, and truth be told, the box for this thing was probably twice as big as it needed to be, because it was like almost a one-size-fits-all box for like the legendary, and then they just like threw the deluxe stuff in it, because now we have just this little module pack, and it's tiny, right? Here is the Ancient Brain, and you can just see the difference in size right here. So just absolutely, right? I almost missed this. If it wouldn't have fallen out when I was emptying the box and tipping it, because this thing was almost impossible to get out in the first place, I might have missed it. And then we have the Wolf Guardian Howlers as another little faction there that you can start with. Oh, that's better off that way. The Fang. And that's fine. And then over here we have another separate one, the Draconic Fury with the Astrodracus here and a Starwing there. So two just asymmetric factions. And I won't bore you with trying to open this up. I mean, this is like a whole nother unboxing video. I'm not one of those people. I very rarely do unboxing videos. Maybe I should make the exception for this. But really, what my big concern with this one is, I am going to force myself to learn this, multiplayer and solo, so that I can have some content out before the end of the year, right? Because this is along those lines of arcs and this, and I'm sure one other big thing like the upcoming Ironwood, which are just fantastically amazing games. And I think there's going to be a heavy split this year in terms of what's number one, depending on what mechanics you're looking for, right? Because although these are both spacefaring, this is your worker placement, engine build, resource gather style. Arcs is your, trickish, take that, super aggressive, meta dynamic game. Ironwood is your two-player asymmetric head-to-head smash 'em, super aggressive, quick play aspect in that role. So all three of those games are just dynamically incredibly different, appealing to a dynamically diverse audience, none of which are probably going to overlap significantly except for yours truly, right? Because I'm an oddball, as always. So that's going to be the question, though. And the big worry I have with this is something as just even a solo side of things is it going to be playable in the time constraints and frame that I have, right? I just was playing Evenfall earlier tonight and experiencing the joy that can be driven from an engine build from that aspect of things, which is a whole separate video in and of itself. But I just go, okay, there's a lot of things going on with Evenfall. They very smoothly work together, and it just expresses to me, again, how bad of a gamer I am, right? They're like, oh, when you break 100, grab this token. And I played again tonight. I'm like, Not anywhere near 100. Because I on this channel, right, the other thing I always say is, right, like, I am not a good gamer. I lose routinely to everyone, no matter what age, no matter how many times they've played it. I pretty much lose. That's the story of my channel. Loser! So I'm excited to see what this will bring and how badly I will be able to perform in it. Because again, right, it's not about my ability to actually play the game well, it's to understand what the game is doing well or not well, or things I like and I don't like, and be able to express that to you to help you make an informed decision and not screw up like I did. Right? Right. You know what? I said screw it. Let's go get Ironwood. Let's add it to the list. Mind Clashes, 2-player asymmetric duelers, where you are basically like a forged Iron Machine type faction versus tree-dwelling rebellion, esque vibe creatures that are lurking in the forests, where you're either the forged machine dominating, destroying, crystal grabbing, drilling in forges and castles, moving through them very quickly, or you're going up against the rebellious spirits and tree oak folk who are trying to, well, undermine and cause chaos and win in the opposite direction. And truth be told, this game is actually it's fantastic. And that's not me just saying it because somebody else really, really big loved it. But on this channel, I am a big purveyor, a lover of these types of games in the first place. The asymmetric, faction-based dueling back and forth. But I think the big conundrum question was, what is Mind Clash going to bring? Or can Mind Clash give me something that is more streamlined? Or just that, is it going to appeal? And again, truth be told, this is absolutely beautiful artwork. And the dynamics of moving around on this map between the inner and the outer ring is just incredibly smooth. And I will be doing a dedicated review separately on this game because it's worth it. The artwork is fantastic. It has little metal components. They sent it to me, right? And I am just really enamored and really impressed of what they're bringing and what you're able to see here with the two different asymmetric factions. And truth be told, without going into too much detail or too much depth here, as I'll just pull out and show you a little bit of what it's got going on here. You have these awesome asymmetric cards, which are almost all unique. There's the foil versions. That was the promo pack. But then almost all of these are unique, and they've got several elements on them. Your attack, your defense, your influence, your abilities down here. And then you've also got the ones that, if I can find a few of them, that just sit in your hand and always come back to you, which I won't find because I'm actually scrolling through here. But they're just all asymmetric, and if you run out of cards, you run out of cards. So this is more like Root, though, as I really have to compare it to that, right? And where I'm going with that is, if you think this is just going to be a straight up, like, 2-player asymmetric kind of do your own thing, it is. But this is actually a very race-like war game as well, because you are going to be trying to do things very quickly and to outmaneuver your opponent with the strength of your faction, because the two strengths are very evident even halfway through the first play of, okay, I need to do this. Whoops, I allowed the other person to do that. That's going to hurt me. Oh, how am I going to compensate? How am I going to balance? And the balance is there. So no spoilers there beyond it, but this is going to be on my top 10 lists of Game of the Year right now, right? Truth be told, I have no qualms about telling you Ironwood is that good if you like this style of things. And playing it less than 60 minutes, that is the accomplishment that I didn't think Mind Clash could do. But so far, so good. Full video to come. Now we're just staying with other stuff that's already in my collection that I love, and we're going to stay with the 2-player asymmetric vibe because we're going back to Summoner Wars. I owe Plaid Hat Games, who sent me a couple of these factions and sent me some stuff to try out their online app, a mea culpa, because they sent it to me a long time ago, and I have been overdue on this, and I want to, just thank them for being gracious, because this is a top 10 game for me all time. And the great thing about this game, it very much reminds me of another game that we'll talk about here in a little bit in the video, is just that the excellence has just continued to pour out, right? What I worry about with expansions, or what I worry about with all of this stuff, I'm worried concurrently about my Marvel United Multiverse Pledge, which is still somewhere out in the ether, even though, other parts of the country have had it for literally like 2 to 3 months at the time of me filming this, and I won't probably have my copy for somehow like another month and a half. Which, that's a whole nother video and rant in and of itself right there. But you worry about like creep, right? You worry about scope. You worry about just the complexity, just all of a sudden, like going from this to this. It reminds me of my Marvel Puzzle Quest game on my phone that I play as an app, right? I've been playing that game for 10 years, literally 10 years. And the text on some of these characters now, you can't even read it because it used to be just like 2 lines. Okay, you press this power and it smashes a bunch of tokens on the board. Now it's like, well, when the day ends with an FRBADAY and the moon is in the right cycle on the 3rd eve of the blood solstice, then this ability takes this form. And that's what I worry about with games like this, right? And it doesn't have that problem whatsoever. Here you have 2 of the more recent, not most recent expansions, the Deepwood Groaks and the Forge. Just, again, doing stuff that is cool. Both of these having, like, significant spatial elements that you're going to be doing in a different way. And, again, they're just freaking awesome. I mean, the Forged here is one that you're just going to be taking as a different group of cards where actually you're going to be building structures adjacent to them, adding damage to them for all adjacent structures, or using that sort of manipulation here in order to do more damage, right? Add 1 damage to each enemy unit within 3 clear straight spaces. And again, just all sorts of cool stuff here. This card may move. After it moves, add a damage to it. After this unit attacks and destroys, though, add a damage to each other card that was adjacent. So just manipulation there as a whole of the movement, but also the damage orientation. And then the Deepwood Groaks here are no different, and they're just freaking awesome too. Once per turn, you may target a friendly unit within 3 spaces, move any number of boosts from this target to another target, because when these things die, or when they kill things, you're going to be giving boosts to those around them. And that's just really kind of cool. After summoning, adding 2 boosts to it. This unit has +1 strength for each boost on it to a maximum of 5. So it's, you know, only 1. But then, you know, it's just such creativity. And it rivals only probably in my head something like Spirit Island. Spoilers here in a minute or 2. And I just love it. And the only thing I can say, as the slightest of detriments, right, is with the online integration that the app has, that it almost makes me not want to play the cards. The only downside to the app, as cool as the app is, you can buy all your individual decks on there ad nauseum. You can have campaigns, you can do one-offs, you can deck customize, however you want to do it, is that you have to click on the cards to have them blown up, essentially, because obviously if you're playing it on like an iPad or like I do, or even on the laptop that's sitting in front of me, right, the text on there isn't as readable at all because of the size of it. So you have to click on it to blow it up. And so when you're playing an enemy in those ways, I mean, that's the biggest downside, is you're like, okay, if I don't know meta what your deck is going to have and what that card is off the top of my head, I have to click on it. There's a lot of clicking as you're learning. That's the only reason I go back to the physical. And, you know, the physical is just easier to get out to be able to play with my wife on a routine basis. Pick your favorite faction and go that night. So all in all, Plaid Hat, this is one of the best games of all time, period. That's what this list is, right? Speaking of that, and one of my best games of all time, this is not what we're talking about. I'm talking about what's actually inside it. I was just going to grab the Nature Incarnate behind me, but really what we're talking about is Jagged Earth here, and the extra tokens and totems that go along with it, as I'm slowly starting to branch out into the solo side of things. It's terrifying, folks. I play two-handed most of the time. But I love seeing all of the new stuff, and with the extra add-ons that Jagged Earth does, that is eventually going to allow me to port in Spirit Island Nature Incarnate, I just need to explore it more. This is also a top 10 board game of all time for me. We're not getting all the spoilers here, because I'm going to do a top 100, or I'm going to at least start it before the end of the year. So that's what it is. And the only problem here is you can see, or maybe not from this angle, but from this angle at least, that I've got a little bit of lid rise right there as a whole. And so I just love it, but it's just full, right? This is everything and Jagged Earth all in one, and Branching Claw. So one of my friends printed off an insert for me, one of the, 3D printed ones, and I couldn't get it to work. And it's probably not on him at all. It's probably on me, but I just went full bore, everything bagged up, and it's got lid rise because I've got all the rule books sitting here as a whole. But I mean, truth be told, I don't really care. This is a freaking heavy box, though. That's the only problem. And getting it all out is a little bit of a chore. At the same time, one of my favorite games of all time, I don't really care about that aspect. So if they ever put out anything more for it, well, I'm going to own it, except for Horizons of Spirit Island. That's a whole nother ballgame. Pass. Just kidding. I do love this game though, and the asymmetry and the absolute balance that we were just talking about with Summoner Wars. This is second to none. Period. It's that good. And I am finally the rocket. I'm finally exploring the depths of Jagged Earth, right? You know, it's not easy for me to get to the table, truth be told, right? My wife hates this game. She absolutely will not play this game with me. I love it. A couple of people in my game group love it, but it's also not one that we get out every time at all because it's just a little bit more overhead, right? It does require a lot of this. And that's lovely. And that's the experience of it because you feel so rewarded when you do that. But the engagement is required. And it's just like, you know, some nights I'm sitting on the couch after the kids go to bed and, you know, some nights I'm up for the very thinky thriller, right? Like the German series Dark, right? If you've ever seen that one, you have to pay attention and then you have to watch it twice to even understand what happened half the time. And some nights you're just not in the mood for that. And some nights you throw on something light, something filler, something along those lines, The Boys, whatever it may be, right? And you're just like, okay, mindless entertainment, there you go. This is on one end of the spectrum. Some of these are on the other, but they're all beautiful. So let's just go right next door right here because I've got it sitting here. Steamforge sent it to me and I've got the rest of it all nicely lined up on the top of the calyx or half calyx that's sitting over there. And this is the latest expansion from God Tier. And similarly, I didn't even really put two and two together. You had Deepwood Grog right there from Summoner Wars, and this is another Treekin style vibe for God Tier. And again, this is like the God Tier that's supposed to be anti-meta because, yeah, right, there's a meta for this stuff. I didn't have a clue, but it's giving you something new altogether along those lines. So this one has been hitting the table a lot more recently, and I really like what this is doing, just again, because this is probably one of the most underrated skirmish games out there. The problem is it's a lot more complex than others additionally. Comparatively, one of the other ones on my radar right now, compared to this one, is the Reborn Super Fantasy Brawl from CMON. They just announced that it's going to have Mortal Kombat characters. Personally, Mortal Kombat does absolutely nothing for me. But I think they're going to breathe life into that thing. And I think it's going to be freaking sweet from that aspect. And these miniatures are just fantastic. I mean, that is just amazing. And the abilities, again, that are going to be here that are just different in every regard. Champions and followers can't be placed or recruited in hexes adjacent to the Treekin. Just, again, giving a completely different dynamic of how these characters are going to be activating and taking their turns and just interacting on the board. And the mixing and matching of God Tier as a whole, I mean, the biggest downside to God Tier, it's I need realistically about 4 of these factions to have a good 2v2 battle, because really this game is best at 2v2, but it's also going to be a lot heavier along the lines of a Spirit Island, as opposed to some other nights, you know, the Mind Clash Ironwood that I was just mentioning, or Battle for Baturnia is going to be a lot more appealing to get to the table, because I'm not going to have to spend as much mental effort, because I already said at the beginning of the video how weak I am, right? In terms of playing these games, even fall score of 67 tonight. So that's more of the issue than anything else, but that's also why I freaking love this game, is because some nights this is what you want. This is what you crave, and you go to it. And we're going backwards here, and we're going backwards to Vale of Eternity, because Vale of Eternity is something altogether that I've talked about, I did my review of, and I was mixed on it. I'm getting it played back to the table more, seeing if we can develop a little bit of a meta, and also going to a side of things where am I going to be in love with this from the expansion content side? Because I've got this expansion on my radar, the Artifacts expansion, to give it just a little bit more than just the simple meta. I mean, that's the beauty of Evenfall, is there is such a plethora of the sacrifice, the specialists, the enchantments, that you will have duplicates, but the combos that are going to come out, or especially at the higher player counts, the combos that are going to be available on any given game are going to be drastically different. And with only this many cards, you know, it's not as done in that regard. I mean, again, it's more of a meta you. I know what's coming, sort of like a Faraway, which is, I still like Faraway, and it's a good chance both of these could end up in my top 10. But I just wonder, Evenfall doesn't need that more. I want that more. Vale of Eternity for me, I think, needs just a little bit more. But are you willing to pay for an expansion for this in the first place? And that's the question more than anything else that you have to ask yourself. And I love the standee. The standee is freaking sweet, but it's also completely unnecessary. And I just kind of wish the production was a little less on that side of things. Apart from that, again, hitting the table repeatedly, bought it, and probably going to get the Artifacts expansion. I've been combing the interwebs since Essen, seeing if anybody's going to pop up shop, but rumor has it is going to be a November buy more than anything else. So can we get it before the end of the year? Does an expansion count as a top 10 game of the year? I don't think a lot of people do expansions because it's not popular. It doesn't get the clicks or the hotness. I mean, that's why this thing never was on anybody's list, I think, right? I haven't gotten to it hardly at all. So I just talked about Jagged Earth, right? Case in point. Now, recent releases, and I'm having some pseudo regrets with this one. Dead Cells, right, from Scorpion Mosque. The first impressions are very positive right now. It's getting comparisons, positively wise, that are similar to Slay the Spire. The problem I have, Slay the Spire, there wasn't a lot of gameplay incentive to get that on crowdfunding. Dead Cells, there was some gameplay. Otherwise, I probably already would have pre-ordered it from one of the various websites that has pre-orders available. And it's just not showing up in the secondary market from backers right now. So I'm going to see if I can get myself a copy. Still don't have a copy of Slay the Spire because, again, after Shut Up and Sit Downs, Love Touch, it's sold out everywhere. And people aren't charging too much above the retail price, but still a good 10, 15, 20 bucks above it. And, Dutch Frugal Me is... right? Like the same video he shows off the deluxeified version of Andromeda's Edge. He's Dutch and frugal. You know what I mean. I'm being very reluctant to spend a little bit extra, which is stupid. And it's just one of those, again, conundrums from a retail side of things, right? Wouldn't have had a problem paying that as the cost otherwise, but that is my big barrier always. And I don't know how you guys deal with that, but I deal with that more so on the retail side of things. Both of those are still on my watch obsessed list. And we'll see where it goes, right? The other just recent released level 99 games. I'm a level 99 game simp, and one of my best favorite games of all time is Bullet Pawn Palette expansions, right? Just like all of these other things, I have a type, asymmetry, head-to-head, take that. And the real-time pattern matching style of things, before you even talk about the cooperative or the solo mode from that aspect of things, this game is just everything I love in a short, small package. The how you play it dynamic of things outweighs the thickness of the rule book. The only downside is that I'm going to buy this stuff and I'm never going to use half the characters, right? Like Spirit Island, you're going to find your favorites. Summoner Wars, you're going to find your favorites. Godtear, you're going to find your favorites and you're going to stick with them. Blessing Curse. Are you willing to pay to find new favorites? That's the ultimate question with all of these games. And the honest answer with some of them is yes. Which leads me just into the next one, Gosu X. One of my top games of 2023. Sorry, we are French. Put out this head-to-head asymmetric faction deck style of things in tiers where you build tier 1 and then you can have tier 2 over tier 1 if you have enough spaces and then tier 3 over tier 2. But there are now 2 expansions and they just got Essen release in French. And I was just in communication with them on their Facebook page today, just asking retailers. And so Hatchet is supposed to be publishing it in North America here. And they said on their social media at Essen that they were going to have English copies available pretty much right after. And so one of these expansions has been out in French for, 6 or 10 months even. And the other one was just announced right before Essen. So I want to have it. Now, what does this one do differently besides the tiering that I mentioned? Is, the factions that you're using, you have a special ability. The factions that are unused, that are not used because you each use 2 of them and smash them together like soccer arms, that actually dictates rules that are changed of the game based off of that. It's freaking awesome. It's freaking awesome, folks. It's on my must-buy at retail list, just like Bullet, whenever it's available. So that's how highly I think of this. The other upcoming retail game that has really, really, really got my eye right now is, truth be told, Fellowship of the Ring, the trick-taking version of things. And again, right, as I said on the News Roundup video, it's Fellowship of the Ring. Which means if it does well, we'll get a 2 Towers and Return of the King version. Just like the Crew, right? I'm surprised, by the way, we don't have a 3rd version of the Crew, right? First 2 are freaking amazeballs. And so I'm surprised they haven't struck all the irons hot for the third one in that. Maybe they do. Maybe that's a spoiler for an upcoming news video. I don't know. I'm just making that up, but I'm sure, right? If it prints money, they're going to be getting more of it. So that one, just Lord of the Rings, right? Another accessible Lord of the Rings game. I'm still waiting for the Fire and Swords expansion for the card game. And so we'll see what this entails and just how good it is and price point wise where it's going to be. Then I came across this, and I shouldn't buy this. This is the which one of these is not like the other portion of the video. I found a copy of Ticket to Ride that I really, really would like. And it's not available in North America whatsoever. So you may be familiar with Ticket to Ride Nordic countries, right? It's the 2 to 3 player Ticket to Ride with the Norwegian state, and it's a very bottlenecked map. And this one is Northern Lights, where it is a sort of 2 to 5, I think, actually player, if I'm remembering off the top of my head, version of that, which has a few slight twists, like all of the Ticket to Rides do, that people are just very well enamored with. What I would call it, based on my research, the one to own, right? Like, I think you should own a Ticket to Ride. I think you should own a Pandemic. My personal choice is Iberia, for obvious reasons. It's clearly the superior one. And this gives me vibes of that, but it is not available outside of Europe. So I need somebody Norwegian to mule me a copy. Actually, there is one site I have found online right now that is selling it, but I mean, it would cost me almost $70 to get this game shipped to the US. So again, right, my retail block is preventing me from doing that. And plenty of people have ported it over in the past. I just haven't found anybody that's willing to part with theirs, which is also a good sign. You know, again, screw it. I said 10 at the beginning of the video. I'm clearly going to be well over that. 3 games that are on my huge radar of this is what I'm interested in before the end of the year. Similarly, what are we talking about? Well, one, I already sort of alluded to, I guess that's actually a side note, the Super Fantasy Brawl, right? That's a pre-order from CMON. But along those lines, on the Game Found Feast that was just announced, 2 of the ones that were on there. One is Final Titan, the upcoming one from Nerd Labs that's going to give us the Garfield touch on the 2-player asymmetric Mindbug-esque vibe. I mean, it sort of gives me King of Tokyo meets Mindbug all in a nutshell. I don't know. Dice rolling, player elimination, arena style. I mean, it gives me sort of that asymmetric card vibe with the King of Tokyo smashing together. So if this can produce something along those lines with Mindbug, I'd say Mindbug is one of the most underrated and underappreciated games out of the last like 2 or 3 years, period. I stand by that. That game is freaking amazeballs. Because you play it in 5 minutes and then you play it again. And then you play it again and you play it again. And there's nothing that beats that. And I know you guys, one of you just in the comment section on one of my previous videos said, I disagree with you, Chris. If I can play a game once in 3 hours, I think that's superior to you being able to play a game for 5 times in that same amount of time, even if the price cost is the same. And you know what? Agree to disagree, right? And as long as you think it's worth it, that's fine. But for me, being able to play more things will often trump playing less, right? When you got this much, I'd rather play more than one thing, little pieces. So that one definitely on my radar. I don't have a copy of Earthborne Rangers. I may never end up with a copy of Earthborne Rangers. However, Earthborne Games coming to us with a Netrunner-esque meets Pagan Fane of Roanoke style game set with like a very similar vibe to the Earthborne series in the first place. And I mean that in the most vaguely loose sense with Hubworld Aidalon as their next upcoming one, just as they're saying it's more like an LCG style of things, a la your Netrunner. And it really has the Netrunner vibe as you're seeking to acquire these agents as seekers, expanding your web, expanding your portals, expanding your technology, your network in order to do so. No details. I mean, it's going to be a 2025 thing. But, you know, I've got my copy of Pagan Fate of Roanoke right here, and I've got, you know, System Gateway that hasn't really gotten any traction because that is such a barrier to entry for me. That's a little bit too complex for me and my wife to play. So it's still sitting on the shelf. But if this is more accessible, just like Earthborne Rangers is in some ways comparatively to some of the other LCGs, I'm not opposed to this. I actually love the idea of this. Speaking of that, from the makers of Isofarian Guard, The Waste of Parts, I didn't realize that mech-driven post-apocalyptic game is freaking cooperative. I totally glazed over that portion of things when I was breaking down the Game Found Feast, and that's why from Sky Kingdom, that's why all of a sudden I'm like, holy frickin' cow. But that one's going to be launching in November, so we're going to see that one before any of these other ones. But that's why I'm so excited about this, because again, that's the theme of this video essentially, is your asymmetric faction head-to-head stuff. We're not even going to talk about Root with the Homeland expansion and the Bats and the Frogs that I can't get played. You know, again, I just hope that the Bats and the Frogs are easier as a 2-player mode, maybe. But Madcala coming up from Druid City. Madcala version of an asymmetric dice throne? Ooh, tempting. But what's the incentive? Is it more like the Unmatched Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles right now, where I want a copy, I desperately want to buy a copy. I cannot, for the love of me, pay that much of a cost creep price point standpoint for alt art. You know, it's sort of like preview videos. Sometimes I just have to draw my line somewhere. You know, I'm not a big preview fan. I'm not a big alt art promo fan. And that's okay. But I kind of want the miniatures. I kind of don't want to pay for the extra alt art and the IP and the cost that went with it from that standpoint. So what's going to be with Madcala, Wonderland's War world setting? You know, I like the Alice in Wonderland. I think it's very artistically awesome. I just hope the gameplay dynamics and mechanics are very akin to a Dice Throne-esque vibe. And then I think you got a match in making there between me and it. And we'll give, you know, one last spoiler here at the end. Dice Throne Outcasts. Sell me on adventures. Sell me on adventures. I have no clue. But if you can give me an incentive to actually get Outcasts on the campaign, do it. I want to see what they can do, Dice Throne, and I want to support it. Just like I want to support Unmatched. But if you're going to get my free loan, I want justification for my free loan, right? There's plenty of competition for it out there nowadays, and just a pure deluxification style of things isn't always going to cut it nowadays for me. Everything, when I was just doing the last couple roundups, every single game is just deluxified, and it's oversaturated. And I just, you know, I'm very happy to wait for retail on some of this stuff nowadays. So there you go. Those are the games that are currently my obsessions. Again, reviewer hat off, Chris hat on. Chris hat? Yeah, Chris hat's either way. Customer Chris? I don't know. Good friends of the channel, I bid you adieu. Stay classy. Have a great freaking weekend. I need to email some of my good friends in the channel, like Plaid Hat and like Steamforged and Simon, and see where things are at and see if they got any news scoops for me that I can tell you about. Also, hit me up down in the deets below. I need questions for viewer mailbag videos. You guys are not giving me a whole lot. I'll just make them up like I did at the beginning of my channel. And then we'll have some real spicy fun. See you around.